You cannot graduate and expect to get the fancy sports cars and get everything right away. I never did that. The first thing I did was save, save, save. I had to save 10% in order to buy a practice. So if you're going to buy a $500,000 practice, you got to make sure you have at least $50,000 in the bank if you're going to do an acquisition. If you're going to do a de novo or a startup, you need at least $25,000 in the bank, which is equivalent to 5% of the 500,000.
I didn't think I would ever do a fucking podcast. I didn't ever imagine doing that. It made me realize that my purpose is to help others reach the goals and reach their full capacity. And if I can impact somebody's life, that is bigger than money. That is bigger than anything else.
Welcome to Livestream. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Plains, with my co-host Jeremy Applegate, where we'll teach you how to stream your life. We're going raw and uncut today. We have a great topic we're going to be talking about. It's what do you do when you graduate dental school? What is the game plan? How should you strategize?
What do you do?
You want me to tell you what I did?
Yeah, tell us what you did, and let's build off of that.
The first thing I was doing was renegotiating contracts with several different DSOs. So at that point, I applied for Aspen Dental, Town Care Dental, which is Dental Care Alliance, as well as Coast Dental. So by the time I graduated, I already had 3 pending offers of which group I was going to go work at. And then I had 2 different offers for private practices.
So you're going to come out of college, out of dental school as an associate.
That is correct. And not only that, if you guys remember, I'm always talking about the fact that I was already applying for bank loans. So I had a pending application with Bank of America for a practice, and then I had a pending application as well for Wells Fargo. Obviously, I got denied from both of them, as you know, the story goes.
The story goes.
But I decided to go with private practice as soon as I graduated, which later I transitioned over to a DSO, which is called Aspen Dental. But I was pre-planning not only that, but I was also making sure that I was covered with my disability insurance. I was making sure that I had at least a term life insurance policy for my family, and I was getting everything ready to go out in the real world. And a big important piece of all this was that I had already completed a hands-on implant training program in Augusta University.
I love it. I'm loving that you're saying all this stuff because Brad Combs is a partner of ours, and myself ended up in University of Florida, their dental school, and we had conversations about this. And one of the questions at dental school, the dentist students did ask is, what should we prepare ourselves for when we get out of dental school? And I told them, just like what you're saying, I'm glad we're consistent with this. Like, you should start finding a job now, and if you're interested in opening up a practice, you need to start applying for bank loans now, and they're not graduating until May. You know, you guys got to get all this stuff going now.
That's correct. You always got to be pre-planning and focusing on at least your 1-year vision. So For me, it was like, I want to go ahead and I want to become great at doing hands-on implants, but I know there's always a learning curve. And then you got to find the practice that's actually willing to allow you to do dental implants, which that was part of the reason I left private practice. And I decided to go into corporate, a bigger DSO. So all the associate doctors that work for me, you guys should feel privileged because I allow you, obviously with the correct hands-on implant training to be able to actually do live patients as the moment you finish your course. So that's a huge privilege where a lot of offices that you go to, you got to ask the doctor, can I do implants on my patients that I sell treatment to?
That's crazy that we still have that stigma of implants are bad. Isn't that crazy?
They're hard. You're hard. And like I always say, and Gordon Christensen always said, I remember in 2015, I went to an ICOI event in Orlando, and Gordon Christensen said, I don't know what you guys are so scared of. A class 2 filling is way harder than a dental implant. And these patients that are in dentures, what other option are you going to be able to offer them? At least offer them some mini implants, so at least they can have a better quality of life. And I would never forget that because I've done some class 2 fillings and class 3 fillings that are extremely difficult compared to a dental implant. I'm not saying that dental implants are easy. I'm just saying that we shouldn't run away from them if we can definitely take the leap of faith and do them.
So a lot of people are, a lot of the dental students that we had conversations with at the University of Florida were talking about doing residencies as well. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great thing. I think you should definitely go straight to residency if you can. I did 2 years of residency. It was one of the best decisions I made because when you graduated dental school, you graduate with very little experience. You get your dental degree, you're like, I'm ready to go, but you need to get some training. We hire a lot of doctors that come straight from dental school, and we can always see that the doctors that's done some residency or actually are internationally trained have a lot more, acute knowledge when it comes to working on live patients, because dentistry, you can have all the theory in the world, but if you're not in there doing the hands-on, you're not going to become better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, dental students, when they're in school, they end up doing all these procedures themselves, right? For the most part, they don't know how to use their team. When you sit down and look at them and watch them on the workflow.
Exactly.
It's kind of amazing on that. So getting that experience is invaluable.
Yeah, it's very important. So when you graduate, you're like, what am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? Where am I heading? And that's why it's so important that we realize that you need to do continuing education. You got to do your residency, and you got to go constantly learning, the knowledge it takes. Like in the last 2 years, I've done so many shifts to my practice, with the digital workflow, with doing more arches, with offering patients different services, with doing sinus lifts, with doing lateral windows, and it's just constant knowledge that you don't stop.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to stick there, it's not good. But if you go back to the topic that we talk about, what do you do when you graduate dental school? It's very complex because most doctors graduate and they're like, where do I go now? Should I go to a private practice? Should I go to a corporate? There's a lot of good corporate, corporate dentistry has a bad name to it, but I learned so much working in corporate America. I mean, you and I come from one of the same programs, yep, which is this big corporate DSO that we both worked at. And what was your opinion on how they mentored doctors and the team?
Listen, doctors were a priority for that organization. They didn't push them to the side. They wanted retention in doctors, so they did everything they possibly could to teach them how to, run through a practice, teach them how to lead their teams. They did all sorts of training, and they invested a ton of money in doctor training and team training, to be honest with you. So, it's not a bad opportunity for individuals to jump into something like that.
Yeah. And what about a doctor that wanted to do what I wanted to do, like go straight and open up a private practice? At that point, I was ready to go. I'm like a type of guy that'll figure it as it go. It's that driver in me, and I'll go and I'll learn from my mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And I hear a lot of people tell me, Dr. Plains, you're not completely transparent in your podcast. I've heard it from my team. I've heard it from some of my colleagues, especially from my team. And you know what? I call bullshit on that, because I'm very straightforward when I say my real stories.
Yeah.
And you can testify, Jeremy. Yeah, we might have to sugarcoat it a little bit so our listeners can understand the views that we're going to. But I'm very transparent, and I say it how it is. Everything is a constant knowledge. You always got to be learning. The best lessons is when you learn from your mistakes. And a lot of my buddies right now that are in private practice, 2023 was one of the hardest years in private practice. We just found out the other week that 2 of the largest DSOs have gone bankrupt. So there's a major shift in dentistry, and people don't want to talk about it, but it is going on, guys.
Yeah, in 2023, talking to just people in the dental industry, there are a lot of people that were worried that they weren't going to have the doors open in 2024. And it's interesting to me, and we're getting a little bit off topic here, but the price of purchase for a dental practice hasn't changed, but the challenges and concerns of a successful dental practice are rampant at this point.
Everybody's shifting. There's a lot of shifting going on. There's the private practices that are making a shift to strictly focusing on hygiene and bread and butter dentistry. There's the practices that are focusing on a lot of training and becoming the best they can be. So when we get out of this, this gray area that we're in, you're already ahead of the game. That's what I would recommend. I would recommend you take this time, you incubate, you learn as much as you can. So when we start going up that upswing again, you're ready to go to take the curve.
Yeah, learn from the challenges. We've just today ran into situations where we had some deals that went bad today. And we're recovering and, wiping the dust off and getting back on the horse and all those proverbial sayings. and we're going to keep going. We're going to blast through this, and we're going to make sure that these things are accomplished. But part of being a dental student is you have to identify. You don't have to have it in stone, okay? But you need to kind of identify which direction you want to go. Do you want to turn left, or you don't want to turn right? Do you want to go towards being an associate, or do you want to try to own your own practice? Because those are very different challenges, and it's not even the money, right? When you purchase your own practice, it's not the money.
They'll give you the money.
Yeah, they'll give dentists money all day long.
They'll give you the money, and the default rate is really, really low. Even though I'm curious to see what it looks like right now with 2023.
Yeah.
We'll probably know better in the second or third quarter of 2024 what it all looks like. But
it's really the patient care and the workflow and understanding your business and working together with people, all that stuff. These guys have never had to manage people before.
No.
They've never had to lead people.
Or business, because in dental school you don't learn anything about P&Ls and, what training should you be doing. Yesterday we were having a conversation with one of our very nice associates, and she's like, what training should I do next?
Yeah.
Where should I go? And that's why it's so important, and I believe that you should at least do 1 or 2 years of residency once you graduate dental school. Or you graduate and hopefully, you can go straight in and start doing some implant training immediately and really focus your first year or two or doing on CE. We have a doctor that he does 2 or 3 different continuing education programs a year.
Yeah.
But he's investing anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 of his salary into continuing education program. You cannot graduate and expect to get the fancy sports cars and get everything right away. I never did that. The first thing I did was save. I had to save 10% in order to buy a practice. So if you're going to buy a $500,000 practice, you got to make sure you have at least $50,000 in the bank if you're going to do an acquisition. If you're going to do a de novo or a startup, you need at least $25,000 in the bank, which is equivalent to 5% of the $500,000.
Yeah, and my suggestion from the non-dental side of this is get professional help to open up your location. Get professional help to identify, if you want to buy a practice from an existing doctor. Obviously we have Livestream U. We've been down that path. We understand the trials and tribulations of building a de novo from start to finish, but we also understand the negotiations part of trying to purchase a practice that's existing. Don't do this by yourself. And my also suggestion is the banks are great, okay, and they have services as well, but don't use your bank to help you negotiate this deal or prepare for a building of a de novo. Their expertise is lending money. Let them lend you the money, but use other resources.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. It's not even the banks. It's also the vendors that are trying to upsell you on a lot of stuff and a lot of garbage stuff that you don't
use
need
them
right
for what
now.
they're experts at, right?
Yeah, a lot of, and that's where, companies like, Livestream U or Ideal Practices help you get everything, squared away so that you can go ahead and elevate your bottom line as fast as you can and get less debt so you can invest in marketing, in a good financial consultant, in materials, in continuing education, and a great team that can help you elevate your practice.
Amen.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. But let me say one more thing before I forget. So if we can break this all down in a nutshell, the most important thing is I'm Alex. I graduated dental school. I have a couple different paths. I'm going to either go and do a residency, number 1. Number 2, I'm going to graduate and go into a private practice or a corporate practice. And then number 3 is, are you going to go and open up your own practice by yourself? So those are the different routes. They all have pros and cons, and we'll be talking more about it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me a message or DM me on social media or on YouTube, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with some great responses to your questions. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I hope you guys like this episode. See you soon.